Yeah, so the title of my talk today is catalytic activity of manganese oxide nanohydrates, which have been extracted from natural resource. And what we have done is we have tried to compare their uh, activity in terms of photocatalysis and also in terms of the microwave irradiation exposure. So I'll go back to the presentation. So the idea was to develop a photocatalyst which could be active in different light sources and under exposure of different sorts of light irradiations. So we all know that there are limitations with the current for photocatalysts that we've been using under your visible light, because they are only active in the UV range due to the higher band gap present in these substances. So the idea to decrease the band gap, there have been many metal oxides that have been combined with conventional semiconductors such as titanium oxide, and then we have cadmium selenide, and we also have zinc oxide. So the idea to decrease the band gap of these conventional photocatalysts is by either doping them with different metals which have a lower band gap than these materials, or by using polymers, conducting polymers, or any polymer which could help in sensitizing the band gap of these materials. So this is the semiconductor-based oxide, and this is the basic mechanism that takes place in a semiconductor oxide, where there is water splitting taking place. You have reduction into peroxide radicals, and there is oxidation into hydroxyl ions. So these ions or these reactive radical species are responsible for the degradation of the organic compounds present in the environment, whether it's in the soil or whether it's in the water. So it's the activation of the semiconductor takes place only in the presence of light, and usually they are very active under UV light. But UV light contains hardly solar light contains hardly 5% of UV, which actually means that the rest of the energy, cannot be utilized by semiconductors, or they cannot be activated under visible light to improve the photocatalytic activity of the substance. So this is what the basic semiconductor limitation is. And to overcome these limitations, like I said, we can either use polymers to improve their activity, or we can use metals, different sorts of metals to improve their activity. Metals, if we are using doping of metals with metal oxides, one of the limitations that we face is that they might undergo leaching, and they might add to the water pollution, which we are trying to, improve by using different sorts of photocatalysts. So the utility of conducting polymers is that they help in tuning the band gap of these semiconductors and help them in getting activated under sunlight. So if we combine or couple a semiconductor with a conducting polymer having a band gap within its range or a little lower than its range, then what happens is that the production of reactive oxygen species as well as hydroxyl radicals increases exponentially, and this leads to the better performance of the overall photocatalyst. So we can see here that this was one of the studies that we have done using orthophenylene diamine and tin oxide. So what we did was we took tin oxide, which has a band gap of 3.36 electron, which is the unmodified band gap of your tin oxide, and we coupled the metal oxide with orthophenylene diamine having a band gap of around 1.67 to 1.83 electron volt. So when this was done, the activity of the photocatalyst under visible light was found to increase remarkably, because as you can see that the band gap of tin oxide is also similar to the band gap of zinc oxide and titanium oxide. So which means that their activity under visible light will be less. So by adding the conducting polymer, by doping with the conducting polymer, by sensitizing with a conducting polymer, or even by formulation of a nanocomposite using conducting polymer, we can actually tune or modify the band gap of conventional semiconductors and help them show better activity under the visible light. So in this work, what has been done is that we have taken manganese oxide. Actually, we have extracted the manganese oxide from cabbage, and we have used the cabbage extract as a reducing agent to modify manganese hydroxide, and then that compound was sintered to form alpha MnO2 rods. Why we have taken a plant extract for the synthesis was that we wanted to go for a greener route, and we wanted to ensure that without the utilization of toxic metal oxides, we can actually synthesize metal oxides by an eco-friendly route. So this is the synthesis which is shown in this slide, that we have extracted taken the extract from the leaf of cabbage, and then we have added the metal in the chloride form in that extract, which was shown to undergo reduction at a temperature of 60 degrees by stirring or carrying out magnetic stirring for a period of 4 to 5 hours, which led to the production of a metal hydroxide. Now, this metal hydroxide was sintered at a temperature of 400 degrees Celsius for 2 hours in a muffle furnace to obtain the desired metal oxide, which in our case is manganese oxide. So we have characterized the metal. We have characterized the conventional metal or the pristine metal oxide that has been formed using XRD, IR, UV visible, morphological studies using transmission electron microscopy, and scanning electron microscopy, which was done through field emission scanning electron microscopy, which was also coupled with EDAX, to see the changes in the ratio of the metal oxygen as well as the loading of the conducting polymer in the photocatalyst. So for the synthesis of polymer modified metal oxide nanocomposites, we had taken carbazole, keeping in fact that the band gap of polycarbazole was found to be quite nearer to the band gap of manganese oxide. So this we are going to discuss later on in our UV visible studies. So we have taken the monomer of our conducting polymer in the dispersion containing alpha MnO2 particles, and in situ polymerization of the monomer was carried out using ferric chloride as oxidant. So basically the polymer was polymerized over the surface of the alpha MnO2 nanorods to formulate a nanocomposite. Now, the first slide which I would like to discuss in this is the X-ray diffraction measurements. I mean, what information did we obtain from X-ray diffraction measurements? As you can see that the black spectrum or the black profile corresponds to the alpha MnO2 pristine, and this compound or this oxide, when modified with polycarbazole in the ratio of 50:50, showed some emergence of the peaks corresponding to manganese oxide. And similarly, as we increase the loading of polycarbazole to 60% and then to 70% in manganese oxide, the peaks corresponding to alpha MnO2 in the 211 plane, in the 030 plane, and the 300 planes were found to undergo immense increase in intensity as compared to the pristine metal oxide. So this indicated that somewhere polycarbazole helped in increasing the crystallinity of the overall nanocomposite. This was what was observed, because the 400 plane, as you can see, did not show any major changes in its disposition. While the peaks, like I said, 211, 030, 300, they were found to undergo, immense increase in its intensity, in its broadness. So, I mean, they were not even very broad, but they were in fact very sharp peaks which were obtained. So they actually indicate formation of new planes and the insertion or the incorporation of polycarbazole inside the planes of these MnO2, MnO2 particles, which help in orientation of or regular orientation of the polymeric chains in the MnO2 structure. And this is what we are going to see in our morphological studies as well. Now coming to the exploring of, the oxidation state of metals, the changes in the oxidation state, because we actually wanted to know how much does Mn, in what oxidation state is Mn present in the conventional manganese oxide, and what changes will it undergo if it is modified with your polycarbazole. So this is the experience profiles, or is the spectrum of MnO2 and polycarbazole modified MnO2, which shows binding energies corresponding to carbon, which was very prominent in case of polycarbazole nanocomposite, because of the fact that carbazole contains a lot of carbon. And then we have oxygen 1s profile. We have manganese in 2 states of doublet peaks of manganese corresponding to 2p, then manganese 2s profile. We have nitrogen 1s and Mn3p. So what we did was we explored all these states for MnO2 and MnO2 PCZ in the compound. So if we look at the spectra of Mn2p, in case of your alpha MnO2, there are a number of peaks in the spectra which correspond to the oxidation +2 oxidation state of Mn manganese and +4 oxidation state of manganese. So the peak that we observe at a higher binding energy around 655 corresponds to the +4 oxidation state of manganese, while the peak that we are observing at 642 around 642 can be related to the +2 oxidation state, or sorry, +4 oxidation state of manganese, while there's a small peak or there's a small hump around 647, which actually shows the presence of the +2 oxidation state of manganese. So when we are comparing the spectra B with the spectra C that we have obtained, corresponding to the presence of polycarbazole in manganese oxide, we see a tremendous change in the broadness of the peaks, in the intensity of the peaks, and there's a very minor shifting which we have observed in the peaks. However, the +2 oxidation peak, that comes out to be a shoulder, or a little more broader with a higher intensity, you can say. So these changes show that there is some sort of an interaction taking place between polycarbazole and manganese, which leads to minor shifting of the MnO2 peaks, or the Mn +2 and +4 peaks. And also there's a lot of noise in the spectra of polycarbazole, which shows that the interactions are quite intense. They're very intense interactions. Similarly, if you look at the spectrum of oxygen 1s in manganese oxide, we see a shoulder and we see an intense peak. The intense one at 630 corresponds to the manganese oxygen manganese interaction, while there is a shoulder which shows us that there is manganese hydroxy interaction as well, which can be due to the presence of absorbed water. But when we observe the spectra of manganese oxide coupled with polycarbazole, we only observe a single peak which shows a tremendous shift to 532 nanometer, 532 electron volt as compared to 630 electron volt, which has been observed in manganese oxide. So again, we can see that the oxygen of manganese oxide has intense interaction with polycarbazole. Now, if we look at the nitrogen 1s spectra of the same compound, again, we see multiple peaks corresponding to the imine form, the NH positive form, and the NH form of nitrogen present in polycarbazole MnO2. So where does this nitrogen come from? This comes from the structure of polycarbazole, because manganese oxide does not contain any nitrogen. So multiple peaks corresponding to the presence of nitrogen reveal that there are a number of quinonoid and benzenoid rings present in polycarbazole. And if we look at the carbon 1s spectra, we can see that carbon-nitrogen peak, carbon-carbon, and carbon-carbon double bond peaks all are visible in the spectrum. Now, we did the SEM analysis, which is the scanning electron microscopy analysis, which was coupled with energy dispersive X-ray, just to explore the loading or the quantity of oxygen manganese, to identify the stoichiometric ratio and the actual formula of MnO2, which we have synthesized. So from the EDAX spectrum, you can see that the intensity of oxygen peak is twice as that of manganese, which means that the structure is more of an MnO2. So we're actually calculated from the carbon content and manganese and oxygen content that is present in the EDAX spectrum, and we were able to formulate MnO2, or we were able to establish that manganese is present in the form of manganese dioxide. And if you look at the morphology, you can see that there are beautiful fibrils that are, or nanorods that are formed in the structure, which are attached together. So if you recall what we had done the synthesis using cabbage extract, and that extract we can see that leads to the production of a very self-assembled and a beautiful structure containing of fine nanorods of similar dimension. Now, if we load polycarbazole into MnO2, we can see that there is a great amount of distortion that has taken place, and the morphology gets a bit disrupted. And towards the right side, if you look at the EDAX spectrum, you can see that the intensity of the carbon peak actually corresponds to 50% addition of carbazole, which was established through EDAX. And we can even see the increase in the intensity of, decrease in the intensity of the manganese and oxygen peaks, and the increase in intensity of the nitrogen peaks. We even observe the manganese peak around 6 kilo electron volt, which was not observed in the pristine sample. So probably there must be some change in the oxidation state that is taking place in the system, which leads to the emergence of this peak. So when we look at the nanocomposites having different ratios of polycarbazole, like 60% loading and 70%, which means that we've increased the content of polycarbazole in MnO2, we see the prominence of the manganese peak at 6 kilo electron volt. And this prominence, increases with the increase in the loading. And if you look at the morphology, it undergoes spherical formation from the nanorod-like predominant structure in MnO2. We see a remarkable change in the morphology, which leads to the production of a bit spherical, elongated spherical particles in the polycarbazole nanocomposite containing 60% polycarbazole and 40% MnO2, while in case of the MnO2 PCZ nanocomposite containing 70% of polycarbazole shows spherical globule-like structure formation, which again reflects that there is a strong control over the morphology or the formation of self-assembled structures when we modify MnO2 with carbazole. Now, this is the pristine structure of the MnO2 that we had synthesized, which I showed you that it forms nanorods from the SEM we had seen. So this high resolution TM micrograph was helpful in identifying the length and the diameter of these nanorods, which was found to be around 28.51 nanometer in diameter and around 150 to 160 nanometer in diameter, in length, sorry. And again, there were some other rods that were ranging between 26 to 25 nanometer. So more or less the width or the diameter and the length of the rods was found to be quite similar. So this shows the formation of regular formed nanorods. And the MnO2 modification as high as 70% loading of carbazole showed the formation of spherical particles as we derived from the SEM studies. And these spherical particles were found to be in the agglomerated form in the transmission electron micrographs, having a particle size of 36 to, ranging between 36 to 40 nanometer, which shows that the particles were too small, which made them accumulate or undergo cluster formation. Now, these are the IR studies which actually reveal the changes in the nanocomposite with the loading of carbazole. So where do we get the peaks which help us in establishing the loading of polycarbazole? So if you look at the spectrum, we can see there is the prominence of NH stretching peaks around 3500 and around 3200, which corresponds to the OH stretching or the presence of some surface water in the composite, while the pristine MnO2 shows a very broad hump at 3150 or 3160 nanometer, indicating that the hump transforms to prominent sharp peaks and also some diffused peaks around 32 nanometer. And these diffused peaks, they correspond to the presence of absorbed water, because in case of MnO2, if you look at the structure, you don't find water in the structure unless there is some entrapped water in the system. So whatever peaks we observe at 3160 correspond to entrapped water, and the peaks are still present in the polycarbazole nanocomposite as well, which means that the water is present inside the structure of MnO2 somewhere, and it's not only surface water that is present. And the peaks of NH stretching, like I said, the peaks, they increase with the increase in the loading of polycarbazole, which shows that in extent of polycarbazole in MnO2 is increasing. And then we have the imine stretching peaks of the imine group present in carbazole, and the quinonoid and CN stretching peaks, which again confirm the presence of polycarbazole in alpha MnO2. So one prominent feature which we can see is that 60% loading has the lowest intensity, and then if we go to the 50% one, it has a bit lower intensity, and then you have the 70% one which comes midway in the spectrum. So the intensities of the NH peaks, they help in identifying somewhere that how with the increase in loading of carbazole, you can actually see the changes in the NH spectrum of the nanocomposite. Now, these are the thermal studies which confirm the stability of the composite. Now, and we all know that metal oxides are very stable and they do not decompose at temperatures, ranging between 300 or 800, but much beyond those temperatures. So naturally, when we took the thermogram of alpha MnO2, we found out that there is hardly any weight loss observed up to 800. But as soon as we load carbazole into manganese oxide, we could see the degradation or the weight loss around 300 degrees Celsius. So we can say that beyond, up to 300 or around 250, the photocatalyst is very thermally stable and can be used up to this temperature. So the idea behind doing the thermal study in case of photocatalysis was to just confirm the stability of the nanocomposites with the loading of carbazole. How does it change? So we can see that the stability decreases with the increase in the carbazole content because it is an organic compound or an organic polymer. Naturally, it will affect the stability of the pristine metal oxide. And the other thing that we can find out from the thermal studies is the loading of the organic content in the metal oxide by calculating it from the char content that we obtain up to 800. So by looking at the char content, we could actually identify how much carbazole was actually present in alpha MnO2 and how much carbazole was present in 70% alpha MnO2. Was it closer to the stoichiometry that we had taken? So there was a good correlation that we had obtained. Now, these are the diffuse reflectance spectrum, which help us in determining the optical band gap. So like we can see that the alpha MnO2 has a band gap of 2.71 electron volt, and with the addition of as high as 70% loading of carbazole, we could actually reduce the band gap to 2.17 electron volt, which was, indeed a good reduction in band gap. That means the catalyst was found could be used under solar light irradiation or visible light irradiation. So with the increase in the loading, we can see that there is a huge reduction in the band gap of the photocatalyst. Now, this is the spectrum of the drug that we had taken, because we wanted to degrade this drug under UV as well as visible radiation. So we can see two peaks, in both the peaks lie in the UV region. Both the peaks of the drug lies in the UV region, which corresponds to pi star transition and pi star transition. These are the degradation plots which we had taken for degradation of this bacterium DS drug in presence of visible light and under microwave irradiation. So MnO2 photocatalyst was used in different concentrations, which was 50 mg and 100 mg, just to explore the effect of loading of the catalyst on the degradation rate. So the table below clearly shows that when we had used microwave irradiation, the degradation was found to be highest, which was 91%, for the peak corresponding to 262 nanometer, while the peak corresponding to 201 nanometer, which was the pi star transition, showed 82% degradation. So both the peaks, the degradation was studied separately just to explore the extent of degradation of the entire structure, including the chromophoric group as well as the non-chromophoric group. So the degradation for the bacterium DS drug using different amount of photocatalyst helps us in seeing that under UV light, the degradation was found to be 89% of the peak corresponding to 201, while it was found to be 86% for the peak at 262. So compared to microwave radiation, UV radiation was found to degrade the composite a little lower. Now, these are the Ellen plots that were taken just to identify the kinetics, and it was found to be pseudo first order in both the cases. So the kinetics of degradation was found to be a bit higher in case of microwave irradiation. The recyclability test was helpful in generating the catalyst up to 4 cycles without losing any amount of the catalyst, and the rate was also found to be around 85% degradation, which was quite high. Now, coming to the generation of radicals, what were the radicals there? Yeah.
You exceeded the time, so can you conclude it soon?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this was actually the second last slide, that radical generation we had taken, and we have explored that it is the hydroxyl radical which was responsible for the degradation. And this was the degradation pathway which was actually proposed with the help of LC-MS studies. Now, with the conclusion, we can say that we can actually compare microwave and UV radiation degradation and see that microwave exposure in case of manganese oxide and polycarbazole is found to be a little more active in the degradation of the drug, and both the reactions follow pseudo first order degradation kinetics. And the radicals that were responsible for degradation were hydroxyl and oxygen radical, and these radicals helped in rapid degradation. So there was a greater amount of hydroxyl radical generation in these systems. So I would like to thank STEM for providing me this opportunity to share my work. And, these are my students who have been helping me. It was their work, and this is my research lab. And thank you very much for calling me, for inviting me.